We're back with part 2.
To end the relationship. She had fallen out of love with him, and college applications were approaching. She had been scouted by no less than 10 colleges, and her plan was to attend Brown University, her dream school. Josh's obsession with their relationship had taken a huge toll on his grades, and Brown wasn't going to be an option for him. Leah remembered telling him that was where she was planning on going, and he freaked out, saying that he would never get in, and he begged her not to go. At the time, she was also recruited by the University of Illinois. Josh applied there in hopes that she would ditch Brown and Illinois with him. But that was the final straw. Leah ended things for good with Josh, assuming that would be it. Because he would take the bus from her school to his every morning, she still had to see him. His friends who took the bus with him yelled disgusting words at Leah. Josh had spread a rumor that Leah had apparently cheated on him with a bunch of guys and then ended the relationship. Leah spent months getting nasty messages accusing her of having STDs and also saying some horrifying things.
You're gonna get
Unfortunately, deleting Facebook was what set off the stalker tendencies for Josh. He wasn't able to see her face online anymore, so he started calling non-stop and sending desperate messages telling Leah that he loved her. While all of this was going on, Leah and her team was set to win the high school championship in volleyball. Josh showed up while Leah was competing and they saw each other. This showed Leah so badly that she ended up losing the title for her team, and it made her furious and heartbroken. Leah ended up picking up his call that same night and screamed at him, telling him to never contact her again. But that's when the threats began. She got a call a few nights later from Josh. After he texted her, he had something important to tell her. Stupidly, she answered, and he began to say how he was going to kill her. He was going to show up at his house when her parents were at work, holding a rope and a knife, and make her suffer like she had done to him. He eventually went on to say he was going to get her before she went into school because he knew exactly where she parked every morning, and her parents were never going to find him. But what Josh didn't realize was that she had recorded what was being said the entire time and had it taped onto her phone. Leah hung up when she felt he'd said enough. The next morning, she went into school extra early, much earlier than she figured he'd be there. Leah showed the school advisor the recording. She felt it with his shame as her mom listened to the recording like she had done something to bring this onto herself. The advisor was so alarmed that he told her to go to the police immediately. Leah and her mother sat in the police station all day explaining the story of her relationship with Josh and how it got to this point. The police then drove to his high school and arrested him while he was in class. As she was bringing food back to the police station for herself and her mom, she saw Josh in handcuffs, and he indeed looked like he wanted to kill her. Post-arrest, Leah got a restraining order against Josh, and he was sent to a mental institution for a short while. It's been 10 years since this happened. Leah moved across the country where this occurred, and she finally feels safe now she's far away. But anytime she gets a blocked call or text from a number she doesn't know, a thought goes through her head that it's him.
Yeah, probably.
I was texting this girl I met through Tinder, and I finally asked if she wanted to go out for dinner. She replied and said yeah, so I picked her up and we got to the restaurant. Things were going well. It was our first time meeting in person. We started talking about our favorite shows, which led to the topic
Is that
of movies.
Pokemon?
Nothing suspicious about this girl. At that moment, we decided to go to a theater after to watch Captain America Winter Soldier. She said there was a cinema nearby, but I wasn't familiar with the area, so I used the GPS on my phone and she helped me navigate. Once we got there, we started walking inside and I realized, oh, I don't have my phone in my pocket. I must have left it in the car. So I started to walk back to get it. However, my date kept insisting I just leave it in the car because we were going to miss the beginning of the film. I mean, it's true I didn't need to have my phone with me, especially since we're going to watch a movie. But for some reason, I was feeling very paranoid about it, and I just got this new phone about a week or so. We went back and checked the car for about 10 minutes, but I couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and her bag, but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to find it, and would you believe, it started to ring, but it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. Very interesting. She took my phone out and said, oh, I must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around, she was walking the other way, so I had to catch up and ask what was going on, but she was being very dismissive and was barely talking to me. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. This woman was trying to steal my phone. If this had gone according to her plan, she could have just pulled the, "Oh, I need to go to the restroom" excuse and left during the movie. There's a big chance that she's done this with other people in the past and continue to do so in the future, and just waiting for her next victim. So that was the last time I saw the woman, and I just drove home without her.
Victim.
See you later.
Ads are peaceful, aren't they?
Introducing Wendy's $5 Giant Junior Bacon Cheeseburger Meal. For $5, this giant comes with double the beef and bacon, nuggets, fries, and a drink. There's nothing junior about it, except the price. For a limited time.
Arby's, we have the meats. Or Wendy's. Okay, I like to call it Arby's because
When I was in middle school, I was constantly made fun of and picked on, and that ridicule transferred to whenever I rode the school bus. So I started walking 3 miles to and from school every day. The path I walked on was pretty safe, mostly on the sidewalk and always on a busy road, with the last 2.5 miles being a straight shot directly to the school. Back then, there wasn't a stigma attached to kids being outside on their own, so this wasn't deemed unsafe or noticed by
what
anyone.
his name is,
I
but
was
it's from
alone
like
with my
the cool
father,
kids.
parents being
He's number
divorced,
1.
and my mother saw me on the weekends. He didn't see any harm in walking, and my mother wasn't aware that I was being picked on in school. It continued for over half the school year. One day as I was going home, I saw a car pull up about 100 feet ahead of me. I thought to myself, that car looks familiar. Oh nice, that's my dad, he's gonna drive me the way home. I started to jog up to the car, seeing him in the driver's seat waiting patiently. His hair looks darker than normal today. Wasn't the inside of his car tan not red? The thoughts left as soon as they entered, and I caught up to the car, opened the passenger side door, and started to get in. As I was tossing my back on the floor in front of me and swinging my legs into the car, "Thanks, Dad!" Before I knew it, I shut the car door and we began to move. This is my father. This man was older by at least 20 years. Hair obviously dyed black, and hands propped at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. The shirt he was wearing looked just like the one my father would have worn. A short sleeve collar button down, brick red with black and horizontal lines, not pressed but not too wrinkled either. He was looking at me, which probably was coming from my grandfather, but instead felt menacing. I heard a click and looked over at the door that had just been locked. I stared at the door for a moment longer, then turned and faced forward in complete rose. Terror. "Hello, I saw you walking. I figured I'd come give you a lift." I didn't move or answer. Don't act scared, just act normal. His voice matched a smile, deceivingly friendly. We were roughly a mile away from home, and half a mile from the next turn needed to head in that direction. All I could concentrate on is how am I gonna get out of this situation? "Are you on your way home?" Home. Yes, go. Where's your house? I can take you back home." Feeling just slightly relieved, I told him to take the next right turn. I felt myself begin to breathe, and I realized how tense I had been. My body relaxed slightly, and I finally moved and wrapped my hands around my backpack straps. We started to come up on the intersection, and I pointed ahead. The dotted line for the turn lane had begun, but he did not get over. Instantly, I tensed back up, and my grip and my gaze on my backpack straps tightened. "Don't act scared. Don't act scared." No, I really need to get back home." He swung into the turn lane and began to take the turn. Okay, see? Everything is going to be fine. He's taking you home." "Are you sure?" "I'll make sure you get home before anyone realizes you're gone." "Stay calm. Don't act scared." "No, I need to get home now. My father is expecting me home right now. He's waiting." "Okay, maybe next time. We meet here at the place tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow sounds good. I just need to get home today now." My eyes were firmly trained on the road ahead of us, hoping if I just focused on the direction home, I would get there. The turn into my neighborhood was approaching, and I informed him again, pointing towards that direction. The next few moments were silent, even though it was so loud in my head. "Oh wait, he can't know where I live." No. What should I? It's probably not a good idea that I drop you off right at your house. Your dad might see me and get mad that I gave you a ride home, and then we wouldn't be to meet again tomorrow." I was able to appreciate the good fortune of my silent question being answered for me. My old neighborhood consisted of mainly apartments, but in the back were a block of townhouses, which is where I lived. If you were unaware of the layout of the complex, the townhouses might go unnoticed. He pulled over to the side of the road in front of the apartment building. He unlocked the door and I hurried out of the car. Backpack still in hand, I began to close the door behind me. "So, see you tomorrow, same time?" I pause for just a second so I can get another look at the man. Still smile, still terrifying. Yes, tomorrow. See you later. Don't run, don't act scared. I swung my backpack on the right way and briskly walked in the opposite direction of my house. I could hear the car still idling behind me, and it wasn't until I was able to turn off that road and leave his view that I heard him start to move. He had to drive up to where I was walking to turn around, and I glanced back as he was making an awkward turn. He caught my gaze and gave a slight wave before driving off. I turned my head and kept walking, and the moment I could no longer hear the car, I ran as fast as my legs and heavy backpack would let me. I ran around to where I could hide between two buildings and hid there for a while until I felt it was enough time passed to feel confident he was not driving back around looking for me. I ran the rest of the way home, keeping a lookout, making sure he wouldn't be able to see me through the backyards. I reached the front door, unlocked it, and almost spilled inside because I was moving so fast. It wasn't until I locked the door behind me that I felt safe. I was home. In the end, I told both my parents, and my mother forced my father to drive and pick me up from school for the remainder of the school year. My father didn't believe me and thought I made up the story to get out of walking to school. Well, it didn't matter. It was worth his disbelief and annoyance every day in the car, so I never had to meet that guy again. When Lacey was 20 years old, she worked as a delivery girl for a pretty popular pizzeria in her area. Initially, she worked the late morning to mid-afternoon shift, but when the guy who delivered the night shift ended up getting fired due to him losing his license because of a DUI, she was placed on night shift instead. Lacey really didn't want shift because you never know if people who order late at night actually want a pizza or if they have other intentions in mind. Unfortunately, her boss essentially told her if she wasn't willing to work the night shift, she was fired. Lacey wasn't exactly in a position to be out of work, so she reluctantly worked the shift. The first month went by without any issues. That was until she had to deliver a pizza to a house that just barely made it to their delivery radius. Lacey put the address in the GPS, and the house was located in a pretty suburban part of the city. She arrived at about 11 p.m. The block was extremely quiet, decently lit, and mostly littered with modern townhouses. But the house she delivered to was a duplex. Lacey rings the doorbell and waits for about 30 seconds. No answer. She rings it again and waits for another 30 seconds. Still no answer. She's standing there getting pretty nervous that something's about to go down, but thankfully a man opens the door. He looked like he was in his late 40s. Lacey tells him his pizza's here, and he just stands there, staring at her. She asked him if he was okay, and he responded by saying, "Yeah, I'm fine, sorry. I got off work not too long ago, and I'm zoning out a bit." He hands her the money, and she hands him the pizza, and as she's making change, he says, "You're really beautiful, you know that?" Not really thinking too much into it, Lacey thanked him for the compliment and gave him his change. She walked back to her car and finished the remaining deliveries for the night. A few days later, Lacey gets a delivery order from the same place. She heads over there around the same time as before and rings the doorbell. He answered the door very excitedly and said, "Hey, it's you again. How are you?" Lacey told him she was tired and can't wait to go home, to which he chuckled and said, "I'm not feeling pretty well." As he's counting his money, he asks what her name is. Being tired at this point and not really thinking, she stupidly tells him her name. As Lacey was making change, he asks if he could have her number, as he'd love to hang out with someone as gorgeous as she is. Lacey's just standing there awkwardly for a few seconds before she said, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." He gets upset and says, "Oh, okay. I see." They stand there in silence before she tells him to have a good night and walks back to her car. He says nothing and still stands at the doorway staring at Lacey until he finally went back inside when she started the car. There was a pretty creepy vibe from this guy, and she even brought it up to her co-workers, and they also agreed it was creepy. Except for her boss, who overheard everything and claimed Lacey was making up stories to try to gain sympathy for having to take the night shift. A week later, there's an order from the same guy, and this is when it hits the fan. Lacey arrived at the house at around 10:30 p.m. As she's approaching the door, it quickly swings open to reveal the man, except this time he was wearing a suit. "Sorry if I scared you. I saw you out the window and figured I'd just open the door now so that you wouldn't have to ring the bell." Lacey was getting scared because there were no lights in the house, so he was sitting in the dark this entire time? And if so, why? He asked if she liked his suit, to which Lacey said yes. He then asks, "Would you like to go on a date with me tonight?" She once again tells him that she has a boyfriend, to which he chuckles and gets close to her and says, "There's no way a girl your age is in a serious relationship. If you go on a date with me, I'll show you how a real man treats a girl." He grabs the pizza box from her, throws it to the side, and grabs her. by the arms.
Oh, shit, you asshole. Asswipe. What the f***? What the? Unless that helps me with my thumbnails, then I
Lacey's
ain't doing
officially
that.
losing her mind at this point and trying not to cry from the fear that was overwhelming her. She starts pleading with him. Dude, please, I just want to go home. I don't want to go on a date. He just stares at her with the most sinister look and says, I don't care. Get inside now. We're gonna have a good time. He starts trying to pull Lacey into the house and she's resisting as much as she can. After a bit of struggling, he let go of one of her arms and starts grabbing something out of his pocket, which she presumed was a knife. Lacey used her free arm to punch him as hard as she could in the stomach. She quickly runs to the car, and as she gets in, he chases after her and tries pulling Lacey out of the car, holding the knife in the other arm, and yells, "Why are you making this so difficult?" She grabs her soda bottle from the cup holder and throws it at him, luckily hitting his head, causing him to let go. She slams the door, and then all of a sudden, he jumps right on the hood of the car and starts scratching and banging on the windshield. Lacey put the car in reverse and quickly backs out of the spot and reverses down the road with him desperately trying to get on. He's banging on the hood, screaming, "Stop the car!" She turns onto the next road as swiftly as possible, and luckily he falls off the hood. Lacey slammed the gas to get as far away as she could from that disgusting man. In her panic state, she drove a couple blocks down the street and kept making turn after turn onto other side blocks as Lacey feared that she was being followed. Eventually, Lacey reached the red light and slammed on the brakes and just sat there at the intersection frozen from what just happened. She began crying and violently shaking. It dawned on her that she came so close to losing her life. Once the light turned green, she pulled over to the side and just sat there crying. Eventually, Lacey gets the energy to drive back to the T, and almost after she walks in, her co-worker knew something was wrong. She practically broke down in front of him and explained everything that happened. Lacey's boss even began apologizing profusely for what had just happened and for putting her on a night shift. He took her into the office and handed her the phone to call the cops. They arrive at the store and Lacey gives them their statement, as well as taking pictures of any marks on herself as well as the scratches on the car from the encounter as evidence. Lacey drove home that night and collapsed on bed and, strangely enough, managed to fall asleep. She quit her job the next day, and luckily a friend of hers managed to help her get a new job at a clothing store. As far as the cycle goes, 2 days later, Lacey received an update from the police. The entire duplex was owned by the guy's brother, who lived on the left side with his wife, and the man lived on the right side of the duplex. She learned that he had been in and out of jail constantly, at first for robberies and assault, but later on it was for other crimes involving a minor. He had been released from jail about 5 months before this encounter. When they arrived at the house, he was long gone, and his family had no idea where he ran off to. But the police insisted they would find him. And indeed, they did, albeit not alive. She spent the next 2 months in fear that he would find her and finish what he had in mind, but the police contacted Lacey and updated her on the case. Apparently, he fled to another city nearby and attempted to kidnap a teenager walking alone on the street. Luckily, someone was there at the right time and they were able to call the police, and the police caught him. He manages to flee and the police chase after him. He blew a red light near a boulevard and the van slammed right into the driver's side of his car. By some sort of miracle, the driver van only sustained minor injuries, while the psycho succumbed to his wounds long before the ambulance even arrived. Lacey thanked the officers for everything they did and for informing her and walked out of the station.